Allow me to put into perspective for you something about the First Names Club, significance of which you deny, and the so-called instant karma of the Beatles' gyrations that murdered Susie Kennedy and followed up with two more of her family. In this case book, which begins after FDR has died, of course, it might have been getting off the ground during World War II. It looks to me like it was being thought of back in the days when Ouspensky was working with Prokofiev and Picasso, the idea of hiding the fourth dimensional intelligence in our surroundings everywhere, even the way buildings are designed, and encrypting movies with a super story from the cathode ray tube of the beyond. Um, FDR, it's important to remember, believed in an American system of government where people cooperate, where they work together. And it was largely through the hard work of seeing how difficult it was to develop a safe passage from the Depression that people stuck together. Well, the First Names Club that you deny being significant really comes into cold relief in the 1962 book called The Fascists in Britain, which is largely about the leader of the British Union of Fascists, whose name was Oswald Mosley. And on the book jacket, this 1962 book by Coleman Cross, is the name General Walker, describes him as the most dangerous man in America. He was arrested for leading the uprising against Kennedy's administration's vow that James Meredith would be escorted by federal troops to his place of honor as a student at University of Mississippi, that a crowd convened under General Walker's command to deny because he was black. Well, General Walker, by hook and by crook, became the lead witness for the Warren Commission. If you don't know what that was, it was the uh, commission that LBJ put together to sanctify Dan Rather's observation that Kennedy's head went violently forward because it was shot from the Texas School Book Depository. It's what you would rather believe in those days than the truth. Oswald was filmed in New Orleans on a reel of film that included the inside of General Walker's house, made by one of his friends. So Oswald was clearly acquainted with General Walker. The man who was locked up for threatening to kill JFK became a lead witness for the commission investigating the murder of JFK when he announced that Oswald had tried to shoot him too because there was a hole in the wall. The pictures outside his house were all cut up, the license plates removed from cars by the FBI and so forth. Disgraceful mishandling of evidence. Also, nobody from Britain said Oswald Mosley is Oswald is the name of the British Union of Fascist leader. General Walker appears on the cover in name of a book about the British Union of Fascist leader Oswald Mosley the year before. So try to follow the chain of evidence and see where it leads. The rifle was in Michael Payne's garage, a man who smirks through his interview made just within days of the assassination, as though gloating that that his incredulous Twilight Zone story about Oswald is holding up. The rifle was in his house 7 days a week. in his garage. We're to believe that Oswald went there once a week, not to visit his wife, who was in boarding there, but to visit his rifle. So the chain of evidence suggests that Michael Payne gave the rifle to somebody he knew who worked in the Texas School Book Depository, and it was planted there to frame Oswald. Simple. Michael Payne's cousin, I believe it was on the board of directors of United Fruit with Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles was fired by Kennedy from the CIA, tipped his ashes in the bullet fragments. He was the man who met with Adolf Hitler in 1933 for Schroeder back to um, forgive the debt that he loans to the tyrant had incurred. So out of this Disney Wonder World, where Disney has Donald Duck goose stepping in some of his cartoons, wearing a swastika and dressing as a brown shirt, arises as the greatest Walt Disney villain of all, someone with the Walt Disney name of Adolf Hitler, all thought up in Hollywood. Well, there was also, at some point in time, a challenge to Disney's copyright culturally to Mickey Mouse, known as Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It's funny. The second Disneyland opened the day Kennedy was shot. That's cunning symbolism. It's as if the gates of paradise had opened. Well, Allen Dulles was not the only perilous acquaintance of Adolf Hitler associated with the assassination. Beaming down from Star Trek, where he worked with George Takei from the Green Berets, a movie that opens with a Marine singing in German, one of the weirdest movies ever made, with John Wayne, who was photographed with Oswald, came Melvin Belli. He wanted to be the attorney for Jack Ruby. He was also the attorney for Hermann Goring's widow, the number two man in Germany under Hitler. In fact, an Errol Flynn's movie made during World War II with the men who first used the Burning Cross for the KKK and Birth of a Nation. Reagan looks into Goring's train car and says, Goring's train, that's almost good enough for me, meaning only Hitler is good enough for Reagan. These subtexts sweep through these military minds behind the scenes in Axis Hollywood. Ingrid Bergman, famous star in Casablanca, that uses a double cross as a symbol of the underground, started with Goebbels cinema in Nazi Germany. Well, for Humphrey Bogart's sake, I guess they let us pretend we were winning World War II. However you may look at it, there's still another, John McCloy. John McCloy sat in Adolf Hitler's personal booth at the Munich Olympics with him when he raised the Nazi standard above the Olympic flag. And Jesse Owens still managed to show him up with his legendary doggerel about a master race of horrible, cruel, stupid people like him. And yet, when Kennedy said the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, those old bigots had it all planned to grab that torch back and said, oh yeah, you think so? In Dallas, with a man named Oswald. They used words for what words could symbolize. Oswald Mosley wasn't the only symbol. It meant they were going to close Oz with a wall. Who's allowed to talk about this stuff? There are books that imply that it was LBJ. Nobody takes offense. There's even books that point out that there's some indication that it was Bush, because he knew DeMoran, the man who got Oswald the book depository job, but was a white Russian, the original anti-communist, who Michael Burley has written a book showing were the primary funders of the rise of Adolf Hitler. He also knew Jacqueline Onassis. But nobody dares tell the truth about the Houdini pulled by Lenin and Reagan. I do believe, oh no, Queen Elizabeth and Donald Trump were all party to it. I believe that Yuri Andropov, who groomed Putin, was party to it. I believe that a major international cult, that's the Ouspensky Circle, leapfrogged around to take advantage of the situation that the powerful have put us in. To see what they could get away with. And I believe that Ronnie and Casper, who attacked and tortured me as a child, were signifiers of Reagan and Weinberger by their knowledge and consent. Casper signified Casper, the friendly ghost, the friendly fascism that got away to Argentina. And they created a whole axis of upside downness. General Walker, the man who was arrested for threatening to kill JFK, ended up the lead witness for the Warren Commission. And we're supposed to just go, oh, that explains why Yoko Ono's gang had the right to kill Searcy. It was getting even for JFK. This is the way UW Dialectical in Seattle, Washington reason. This is the way the University of Pittsburgh reason. This is the way Tim Kaine reason. This is what Obama and Hillary Clinton were employed as understudies to make civil history by the talents, if you want to call them talents, of attorney, the powers of attorney. I'm just, some guy who sees it, talks about it, who they refuse to dignify or allow to have a life or stop torturing and abusing or allow to make a living or stop threatening, and who they poisoned them. They treated me the way you say Putin treats Navalny. Nobody ever called school when I disappeared. Even though I was crying in the office, I was going to be killed. And then dummies let it happen again to some kids in Uvalde, and you don't even take a look at the synchronisms in the so-called, I don't want to disgrace the word, I'll call it, instead of something dignified like poetry, I'll call them lyrics of the mind game.